speaking after Suresh, and who is no less a speaker, who also will talk about social exclusions and the manner in which an entire population has been marginalized in the last several decades. Harsh Mander, for you.
Friends, I wanted to start by saying that it's magnificent that in many ways that Kavya took this initiative of bringing us all together in this room to celebrate the life and work of someone like Justice Suresh, who stands for the finest values of our Constitution and a lifetime of struggle for what is right. And I was moved almost to tears in the last sentence that he spoke this evening, when he said that I realized, although my voice will not be heard in this court any longer, the voice of my conscience will be heard, and it's been heard loud and clear across the country, and it has moved us all, and therefore bringing us all together for this celebration. Thank you, Fraternity. In different ways, the speakers have been speaking about the Constitution, and even Sonia Sori spoke about her commitment to fight for justice against people who are violating the Constitution and everything it stands for in every way through the Constitution and its values. And Professor Hargopal spoke about, again, the Constitution, its values under the soil. I will speak about one aspect of the Constitution, one of its 4 pillars, which we always speak about, we mention almost in a litany, but we understand it very little and we practice it very less. I was a few days ago in a district called Mewat, which is the next district after Gurgaon. It's a district with the largest proportion of Muslim population, people outside J&K and Dispur in Assam. It's about 80% Muslim people. A week before Bakrid, there was a police. This was not vigilantes. This was the police came and started taking samples from the biryani that was being sold on the roadside. They bought, there's a whole tradition because it's on the highway, and we calculated that there are about 3,000 biryani stalls. Each biryani stall is actually a household which, at least 5 people work on it. Somebody collects the firewood, somebody prepares the meat and the rice, and then you transport it and you sell it through the day, and you need a few hundred rupees. And it's really famous because on the Gurgaon Alwar highway, roads, etc. So police came and started taking samples, saying that we're going to investigate whether the meat of this of the biryani is cow meat or buffalo meat. And there was great fear, and they threw the meat, etc., etc. And then, for this scientific forensic, veterinary forensic, this was sent to some laboratory in Haryana Agricultural University. And some days later, rumors started coming that it has been found that 5 of the samples were actually of cow meat. And there was a sense of great fear across the whole district. And all these 3,000 stalls closed down. Because they said, how will we be able to, and when I went and met them, they started using the word akhlaq as a verb. And they said, hame akhlaq ho jayega. And I didn't understand initially, and then I realized that they're saying that people will lynch us I will keep saying it is buffalo meat and people will lynch us and I will be killed, and how can I take this risk? Then Bakri was actually, and this happened just a week before Bakri, they were terrified about how, what will happen when they do the slaughter of the animal. And the vigilantes and the police and the administration. And then I said, no, but there was a problem with cows, but certainly there's not a problem with the other buffalo and camel, which they traditionally do. They said, no, when the truck comes with the animals, वो झंडा बदल देते हैं. मतलब if it's a cow, then they are cow rakshaks, and if they are other animals, they become Menka Gandhi's animal rights people. So झंडा बदल देते हैं, and they attack us in either case. And as a result, two things have happened. One of them is that there was almost no sacrifice in Bakri this year. And it's a poor area, so I was saying, they were describing to me that actually we can't afford, so 7 families join in and buy one animal and do the sacrifice, which is actually to honor the memory of Ibrahim, who was willing to sacrifice his son on the command of the Lord. And so they could not celebrate Bakri. They could not sacrifice. They said almost no house actually had the courage this year. For the first time, old people said, for the first time in our lifetimes, we did not do a sacrifice this year. And these 3,000 people have lost their livelihoods. We might talk about large injustices, but for me, it deeply broke my heart. And I recalled once again that this is an onslaught on that 4th pillar of our constitution, which is most forgotten. We talk about justice in the preamble, we talk about liberty, we talk about equality, wonderful, important values, and we understand them a little. But the 4th pillar is fraternity. And I've been thinking more and more about fraternity. I think we talk about the word, we understand even the meaning of fraternity and what it implies and why we talk about justice, liberty, equality and fraternity. Dr. Ambedkar said that without fraternity, liberty, equality, it never become, they're like a thin coat on a wall, and they can never become a natural order of things. Liberty and equality will not naturally happen unless there is fraternity. And fraternity is described as the common brotherhood, and that is a problem with the word fraternity because it does literally mean brotherhood. But I think we need to sort of emphasize, we talk about the brotherhood and the sisterhood of all people, which gives unity and solidarity in social life. But actually, when I looked at the Hindi version of the Constitution, I found that they used a word which is really quite lovely for fraternity. And the word is bandhuta. Bandhuta, literally, bandhu is friend. So bandhuta is in a sense the ideology of friendship. That we are bound by an ideology of friendship. And it's become truly my favorite word. Because I think a great deal of what we're seeing around us can be understood as assaults on that idea of the fact that we are bound by friendship as a people together. I've also been thinking more and more about what fraternity, bandhuta can really mean. And I've thought that there are many what I would call sibling ideas. Siblings are brothers and sisters of the idea of fraternity. One of them is, of course, the idea of brotherhood and The other is the idea of solidarity. A third is the idea of compassion. And compassion is a word we often understand as, I'm here and giving compassion to somebody here. But I really like to think about compassion as an egalitarian idea of two people who are equal in every way, and one recognizes that the other person, equal in humanity, has had a difficult life, is suffering, has suffered, and does this, and I care for that reason. So that kind of compassion. We talk about empathy. Another sibling idea of solidarity, of fraternity is empathy. It is caring. It is giving and sharing. It is belonging with and to each other. And ultimately, it is the idea of love as a political and social idea. And I think more and more that we need to remember, claim, build, strengthen that pillar of our Constitution, which in some way is the foundation of even of justice and equality and liberty. Empathy. Let's talk about empathy. There was a moment, a few years ago, when I felt was a rare moment of public empathy in a society that has become extremely uncaring. That was the 16th December gang raid, which was a moment where, for a woman whose name we didn't know, whose face we didn't know, her suffering became something that we shared and felt as our own. And that was, to me, a moment of solidarity, of fraternity, of empathy. I think. But while I celebrated that moment as a moment that we are still capable of this kind of solidarity, it was also a very strong reminder of the limits of our capacity for empathy. I worked with homeless women on the streets of Delhi. The first time we built a shelter for homeless women, I remember asking them what changed most in your life. And one of the women said, for the first time in 17 years, I can sleep, close my eyes at night and know that till morning no one is going to wake me. And I don't think any of the men in this room, not myself, not even Justice Suresh, can probably understand what that means. But even for the women in this room, to imagine one act of rape is something that you would battle for your life. To live for 17 years, unable to do anything about being raped night after night after night, what it would mean. And yet, we never have a candlelight march for homeless women to have just a safe space to sleep at night. Can we not do that? It's something that I went to the Supreme Court, have got orders, but government after government has refused. Bombay has been one of the, Mumbai, I'll get thrown into jail. Mumbai has been one of the most adamant. They have refused to create a single shelter. Where is our empathy? But then, where is our empathy for the women in Chhattisgarh that Soni described? Where is our empathy for Dalit women who suffer sexual violence in the routine? Where is our empathy for Manorma in Manipur, who was assaulted by and gang killed by security personnel, and which caused so much anguish to the women there that they made that iconic protest of taking off all their clothes and standing naked. Somehow that doesn't move us. So we are capable of empathy for people we feel are like us, but that's where our limits end. And I think the idea of fraternity will have to be about recognizing that she is also like us, and she is also like us. It has to come to a moment when you walk out of this building and you're passing a waist down where you see this mentally ill woman who's homeless, whose hair is matted, who's doesn't know who she is, who's covered with grime, who's covered with her own excreta. To recognize, to be able to look at her and say, she has exactly the same dignity as my mother. Because if my mother life had treated her differently, maybe this was where my mother would be. And if life had treated this woman differently, she would be perhaps where my mother is. And I think it is that recognition of our common humanity that for me is ultimately the idea of fraternity. Caste in India and gender, to me, are the very antithesis of the idea of fraternity. Because, as Rohit Vendera said in his completely heartbreaking indictment of I think everything that we've achieved or not achieved in these 70 years, he said, I could not escape the fatal accident of my birth. The fact that India continues to be a country where millions cannot escape the fatal accident of their birth, even today, as a woman and as somebody belonging to a disadvantaged caste. And Pune, in that sense, it is a breakthrough moment because first you are condemned to do work which everybody regards as the most humiliating. And then you are stigmatized and beaten up and assaulted for doing that particular work to which society has condemned you, and without which society cannot manage for another day. That's that's why it's the antithesis in many ways of the idea of fraternity. But there are many assaults that we're seeing happening over and over again, and particularly, it's the overheating of those assaults in the last 2 or 3 years. One of them is this idea of love jihad, and the idea of the Muslim male as a sexual predator. And as ideas go, it's actually an extraordinarily strange idea. It's almost funny if it was not so dangerous an idea. The idea that good-looking Muslim boys are picked up and trained to attract Hindu girls who have nothing in their heads, and so on and so forth. It's an idea that reminds me of those television advertisements which show somebody using a deodorant and all those girls falling over them. I mean, it's an idea as absurd as that, but it's an idea which has led, for instance, most recently to slaughter in Muzaffarnagar, and the expulsion from, we recently completed a survey, found in just 2 districts, 50,000 people have never been able to return back to their villages because of simply the myth of love jihad. And the slogan was Beti Bachao, Bahu Banao, which is like a double kind of assault. So you bring in the Muslim girl and you save your daughter from Muslim men. And I was just talking during tea, this myth exists, but recently we had the National Human Rights Commission, no less a body than the National Human Rights Commission, actually investigate not the fact that 50,000 people have been displaced and are living in extreme misery. We've just brought out a report called Living Apart about the situation of these people. Not investigating their situation, but investigating a canard that 340 Hindus from a Muslim majority town had to migrate, according to this something that the BJP MP said. They had to migrate because Muslims had come in large numbers. Now, what the NHRC did was to go and investigate this after, in fact, the Hindu and Indian Express said no, even out of those 350, most of them had left 10 years ago or were the NHRC after that then goes and sends an investigation team to inquire into that, and then produces a report which says 25 to 30,000 Muslims have come in, riot-affected Muslims, so they're not concerned about those 25 to 30,000 riot-affected Muslims, have come into Kerala town, upset the demographic balance, become dominant, and as a result crime has increased, and worst of all they say Muslim boys stand on roadside and pass lewd remarks against Hindu girls because of this. And this is an NHRC report. So we went and tried to investigate, and we found that Kerala was a town which totally had a population, according to 2011 census, about 80,000, of which 80% were Muslim already. And we went house to house. We found a total of 270 new households had come in out of fear into that city and settled down, which meant at most another 2,000 people had added, which is not something to, which in any case is, they have the right to be there, they left because of fear, and the concern of the NHRC should have been, why did they have to leave and can we make things safer for them there? Instead, they took it as a problem that they've come here, they made the 2,000 into 25,000, and then they said, and they've increased crime and they've started teasing girls, which is really the love jihad idea, which actually resulted in the massacre in the first place. And the NHRC is saying this. Then we went to the police station, and the police station said there had not been a single case of so-called eve-teasing registered over the last year and a half in any police station in Kerala town. So this, to my mind, if India's highest human rights body does this to the idea of fraternity, I mean, ultimately the idea that Muslims and Hindus are living together should be something that is, that should be in the natural course of things. And the fact that they were expelled because of the riot should be where the NHRC should help bring them back. And not look at the increasing numbers of Muslims in a particular area as a problem which has led to crime and led to, I can't believe that an institution like the NHRC has so fallen, and where is fraternity in all of this? I was once, a couple of years back on a panel like this, and Tushar Gandhi was there, and we were also talking about love jihad. And he told me that Mahatma Gandhi had one of the things he used to do every year that he died was to, on one day, celebrate and honor those couples who are married outside their caste and their religion. And his son, Gandhi Desai, continued this till his death. And I was just thinking that, you can look at a Hindu-Muslim marriage either as love jihad, or you can look at it as a celebration of India's sort of fraternity in a sense, and it's really about what we do. The whole debate about cow slaughter, the ghar wapsi again is an idea. What is ghar wapsi? It means that Hindus and Hindu dalits who have left the faith, Hindu faith, in search of equality in religions which sadly promised equality but did not give it to them because they retained their caste even when they converted, have to be brought back home. So home is the Hindu religion, and somebody who's moved away has strayed away. Again, where in all of this is anything of the imagination of India's constitution and our collective as a set of people who belong with each other. I also wanted to underline that, one more thing about fraternity, that it's not just, this thing about social relations between people of different castes and communities and languages. Fraternity is also very important for public policy. Because, when I see a homeless child sleeping outside, only when I see, that I get the best health care, but, the parent of an impoverished person has no way it should cause me pain and outrage if we belong with each other. If we really are one people. So Noam Chomsky, Professor Gopal spoke about, and he was asked what is social protection. And he said social protection is ultimately the idea that we should take care of each other. And to my mind, there is no better description of why we need social policy in which we need to take care of each other. So we have universal health care, we need to have universal education, pensions for the aged, maternity benefits, because we must take care of each other. And so in many ways, I think the assaults on justice, liberty, equality are grave enough. But the assaults that we see today on fraternity, which in some ways is the foundation of all of these, are the gravest. And we need to think about and train and build a compassionate society, a society of solidarity, a society where we truly belong with and to each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Harsh. And now we have Achin Vinay speaking to us on an issue